Good afternoon. During this session, we will talk about when survivors of sexual abuse become mothers. That is to say, what is the impact of violence experienced during childhood? What kind of effect of impact will it have on pregnancy, delivery, and the first interactions between mother and child? My name is Patrizia Mazza, midwife of Rome. And for a few years, I've been dealing with pregnancies, delivery, and the time just after birth. For sure, the experience that I've had on gender violence and the courses, the training courses that I've participated in, helped me open my eyes and observe some reactions that women had, and which is not always easy to recognize. Such experiences and training courses allowed me to have to be more able to listen, to observe and to listen to the women that I meet. So, during this session, we will deal with the following topics. First of all, we will provide a definition of child sexual abuse, and then we'll talk about the incidence of the phenomenon, and we will also talk about the characteristics and the impact of child sexual abuse and what kind of impact it has during life, always referring to pregnancy, and also possible pathways that we can build in order to support in the best possible way a woman that is pregnant, in order to help her have a good childbirth experience, and also in order to support the best possible relationship between mother and child just after delivery. So, survivor, with this word, we define a person that underwent a form of sexual abuse when a child. What do we mean by sexual abuse? Sexual abuse can be verbal if a girl is labeled as easy prostitute, or if the language is a sexual language, or otherwise it could be psychological, that is to say, force her to give photos, videos of sexual interactions, and it could also be physical violence, so a real sexual relationship, forcing the child to be a victim of these acts. So it means that the involvement of a child in activities that he or she does not fully comprehend, is unable to give informed consent to it, or that violate the laws. The incidence of the phenomenon of abuse is really frequent everywhere in the world and at all social levels. One child every 4 or 5 has been a victim of sexual abuse. In Europe, it is estimated that between 20 and 20% of children are sexually abused. Therefore, it is a very widely spread phenomenon. And as social operators working with women, well, it is quite easy for us to meet a woman or a man who were victims of violence and abuse during childhood. Sexual abuse, well, we know that perpetrators most of the times are men, and often they perpetrate violence against children who are not even 6 years old. They are well known, they are part of the family. So often it could be one of the parents, it could be an acquired parent, a sibling, or even teachers, priests, trainers, a neighbor, a home neighbor. So people that are very well known by the children. Sometimes the children trust them, and so as a consequence, the situation is very peculiar. As I said, this is a growing phenomenon, and abuse, sexual abuse on minors inside schools, actually. This phenomenon is increasing. It is on the growth in many countries. So violence against minors by other minors inside the school. Abuse on children also has some characteristics. Very often it is secret. The perpetrator manages to manipulate the child, convince the child to keep it secret, as if it was their own special relationship. But this creates a sense of being inadequate on the part of the child, because the child feels that there is something wrong. Sometimes the child thinks that it is her or his fault. She's ashamed, she doesn't know how to get out of it. And then if the survival of their life depends on the perpetrator, then the situation is really dramatic, because the more the abuse keeps on reiterating, the deeper the impact on the child. So we have seen that these characteristics, like the sense of guilt, for example, the sense of guilt makes the child feel it's my fault, I deserve it. They feel dirty, bad, and they feel ashamed because they perceive that there is something wrong. There is something wrong in what is going on. And they feel they have no power, they have no control on that situation. They feel they have no value, and they don't know how to get out of it. The body will always remember the abuse it was a victim of, and if it was a repeated abuse, there will be very deep traces. Psychological, mental suffering can turn into physical chronic pain, and therefore some parts of the body will tell about the suffering in a deep way. For example, keeping the mouth shut and closed without being able to speak, or losing memory in a way, well, sort of forgetting about something that happened. Some parts of the body are like dead, and usually it is the pelvis area, and we will later on talk about the impact on feelings, sexuality, and therefore about the life of the child as an adult. It is a sort of physical immobility due to this very deep suffering caused by the abuse the child was a victim of. Very often, the children adopt some strategies in order to survive. So, for example, sometimes they want to delete that experience from their memory. So they delete that memory, that experience, as if it never happened. up to getting to a complete dissociation. It didn't happen to me. Or they deny the gravity of what happened. It wasn't that bad. But as we've seen, also when I tell myself that the situation is actually different from what I experienced, the body, however, keeps the memory, and it creates some areas of suffering that will be there during the entire life. Well, obviously, being victims of sexual abuse during childhood may have some effects on adult life. There may be difficulties in relationships with partners, friends, family, colleagues. Sometimes these people also are addicted to alcohol or drugs, and therefore there is a promiscuity starting from adolescence, sometimes often with pregnancies, undesired pregnancies, and therefore the life can be very difficult when the children become adult. And very often the choice of the partner. We see that very often the partner is violent. So as if the story repeats itself over and over again during life. But let's try and see what is the impact, what are the repercussions of sexual abuse during childhood later on. For example, very often some sexual dysfunctions seem to be rooted in sexual abuse, or some dysfunctions that cause some chronic pain, some very severe inflammatory processes that lead to sterility, some inflammatory processes, some forms of endometriosis that also seem to be caused by trauma. And sometimes there are difficulties in accepting some forms of treatment. For example, treatments which require to be touched. It could be even just a blood sample, or it could be some dental treatments. All these forms of treatment on the body, very often they could be badly tolerated by those who were victims of sexual abuse when children. And sometimes when they manage to get pregnant, pregnancies are very difficult, because very often from the very beginning there is a very deep, severe nausea, and all the changes experienced during childhood, which are normal due to some hormones like relaxin, which is very well tolerated usually, but actually they are lived as very deep pain in the body. And also the movements of the child inside are, they often cause pain to the body. So even when pregnancy is started, however, it is very fragile during the 9 months of pregnancy. And sometimes there may be some blood losses, or it could be a preterm delivery. So let's say that the impact of the trauma on the sexual sphere could be very deep and very severe. And this is why it is very important to be able to understand, interpret some signals. We need to be very careful. We need to be able to recognize some forms of abuse. These women that were victims of pregnancy. Pregnancy confirms the normality of the history of the health of that woman. So the strength, trust in her competencies, in her possibilities and ability to keep on going on. But some other times pregnancy highlights some situations of weakness and fragility. For example, sometimes the fact that these women don't recognize the signals or signs of pregnancy. So sometimes it happened that we met women who were at the 5th or 6th month of pregnancy, and they hadn't realized that they were pregnant. They hadn't recognized or identified any sign on their body. So this is why we should be alerted. We should pay more attention to these women. And then there are some other cases where the woman will started delivery and she denied it until the very last moment, saying that she hadn't realized that she was pregnant. Until a few years ago, it seemed impossible to me. But actually going deeper, studying many different topics, now I realize that our mind tries to protect itself. It tries not to recognize, not to identify some information and some messages. And sometimes, even if a pregnancy is well recognized from the very beginning, as we said already, well, there are many changes, obviously, and the women go to the emergency department too often. They change their family doctor very often during pregnancy, or they don't feel safe in any hospital. They can't choose the hospital where they wanted to deliver their baby. Very often these women decide to deliver their baby at home. They want a very confidential delivery in maximum privacy. So this is why we have to go deeper into these signs. We need to understand if these women have some memories of violence, because by doing that, if we do that, we will be able to assist them, support them much more during delivery. Pregnancy might be a very important chance, a very important occasion for the woman, first of all, in order to meet a professional with whom they can establish a trust-based relationship. For this very important experience is the 9 months of pregnancy. Or during the 9 months of pregnancy, women can meet with health operators quite often, and therefore there will be more occasions for them to tell about their story, about their experience. And also during pregnancy, there are many courses like childbirth courses, for example, and therefore this means that women will meet at the courses quite often, and the woman will have more opportunities to establish trust-based relationships with health operators. And at the same time, health operators have the opportunity to observe the dynamics of the group and also of couples and women. If I'm aware of the fact that the words that I'm using might have a very important effect on a woman that underwent violence or abuse. Therefore, if I use words like relax yourself, let yourself go, it is very important for me to observe what she's doing. It's very important to keep it under control, how she's perceiving it, how she's receiving it. Because women might activate some memories. These words might trigger some memories. Or when we describe how to how to squeeze the breast, or to take the milk out of the breast, on this topic might trigger memories and experiences. Therefore, we need to be aware, we need to be able to observe the way in which the different topics are accepted by the women. And then another very important tool to propose might be the fact of proposing a childbirth plan, because by doing that we might be able to listen to the needs of that woman, of that couple, her expectations, what kind of support she needs or she expects, if she's worried, which worries she has, how we could help her. And by doing that, we might have the opportunity to, again, describe the different stages of labor, what might happen, and also what might help her relax herself. So, we might inform her about the different examinations. We might inform her about how the examinations are carried out. And also, we might use these meetings in order to explain about labor or delivery, and also if there's anything she desires and how she would like to be in touch for the very first time with her child. Therefore, the childbirth plan will help us getting to know more about the needs of that woman. And the childbirth plan will also help that woman fully understand what this experience will be about, and also how she could be better. So during delivery, the fact of getting to delivery with a childbirth plan will help the operator collect more information about that woman, and therefore, thanks to the plan, the operator will be able to support the woman as much as possible. And then, for example, during childbirth, we might have home visiting, after birth, we might have the home visiting, for example. This is a tool in order to support the initial phase of that relationship. And also home visits can help the mother with her fragilities. So again, for women, it's very important to keep control on their body. The more information they have on how to manage pregnancy, explain why there are some examinations, and also explain the objective of every examination, well, this will help women for sure. And also, above all, planning delivery in order for them to feel safe about anything that might happen. So we will explain every stage to them, and also we will also explain that we will ask for any authorization to her, and by doing that we will manage to overcome the stress, the fear of these women who might be scared of being out of control. And obviously, as well as maternity, we also have the paternity experience. Therefore, it's always very important to remember the figure of the partner, the role of the partner. It's very important to try and understand if the partner knows about the abuse the woman was a victim of, and also knowing how and if he is facing this situation. Sometimes it is possible to do this together. Some other times we have seen that women have completely denied this experience, and only some situations might trigger that memory. So we've seen, pregnancy and delivery have very high potential as triggers. And then, well, we also have to take into account that also the partner might be a survivor. So even the partner might have been a victim of violence during childhood. So again, the health operator might be a guide in order to support in the best possible way also the partner who's supporting the woman during delivery also. So with regard to touching, physical touch, physical contact, well, how sharing things with the woman. Sometimes the woman might not want the partner to be present at birth. Sometimes the woman might prefer the first touch of the baby to be with the partner and not with her. So together with the couple, we can talk about all these points and we might find the best solutions for their experience. Let's try and imagine some very delicate situations when supporting women during delivery and labor. These are challenges if we don't know the woman, if we meet the woman for the very first time during delivery. So the prodromic phase might be too long. She doesn't manage to lose control, let herself go. So, for example, something we could do, we could make sure that the environment is as protected as possible, that the woman feels safe in order to let herself go. And by doing this, we will shift from the prodromic phase up to an active labor. But sometimes there are such long labors or labors where we do have contractions, but they don't lead to anatomic changes. During this stage, what could be very useful? Well, it could be very useful to have a bath, because water can help to create a certain distance between the mother's body, the operator, the father, any person who's inside the room. So it creates more intimacy, and it also reduces pain. It allows the woman to change position more easily. And therefore, having a bath is a possibility for labor, since it provides more comfort for the woman. So whenever possible, my suggestion is that also this possibility should be tested. The expulsion stage, well, this is a difficulty. It is very difficult to let yourself go against any resistance. Let the child go. And so the mother has to be helped find the best possible solution in order to let the child go. Then at birth, it might not be surprising, if we see that the mother is not accepting immediately the first touch with the child. If she needs some time, she needs to have some time. Also, she might have need some time before feeding the baby, and therefore all these situations might take place, especially if the woman experienced trauma. And our non-verbal communication is very important. This is why we will have to support her in the best possible way during her experience. We may find ourselves before different situations during childbirth. For sure, the most favorable situation is when it is possible to build together with a woman, because we know her already, because she's already told us about her abuse, and therefore we have had the time to prepare a tailor-made assistance for her, and therefore we had the time to get ready, prepare ourselves for different possibilities. Then some other times the woman tells us about her abuse experience right during labor, and it is very important to listen to her, but at the same time we need to help her stay at the present time. We need to support her connect herself with the birth of her child. Well, always knowing that we will need to go back to that topic, but what is very important right now is to make sure that all the energy is channeled towards the present experience. Then some other times the woman says nothing, but the position of labor might trigger some memories connected to trauma. And, for sure, these are the most complicated, the most difficult situations, because sometimes these are flashbacks, very confused memories that make the woman close herself, have some physical changes in her body. And for sure, if we can't work directly on the memory, we can work on the environment, though. We can make it very intimate as possible, and also the way in which we refer to the woman, the way in which we ask for her permission to touch her, to visit her. It might make her feel safer. Or similarly, just after birth, there might be some resistance for the woman to have the very first contact with the baby. And therefore, it's very important to give her time for the first meeting with her child. So, which strategies could we use during the postpartum time in order to help the woman with breastfeeding? Well, for sure, it is easier if we manage to talk about this topic before the childbirth. We will help the mother be prepared. We will also have the right tools in order to support her. So, for example, if when breastfeeding the feeling is too strong and she can't accept it, then we could use some nipple shields. If she can't accept it, then we might use the bottle, for example, squeeze the milk and offer the mother's milk with a bottle. Sometimes there are some babies that touch the breast when breastfed. So we might recommend a necklace, for example, that could attract the baby's attention, draw the baby's attention, and the baby will touch the necklace and not the breast. So it is important to offer different options. And if this is still too strong, it is important to accept the mother's decision not to breastfeed. And anyhow, we will have to support her, help her, establish a good relationship with her child, regardless of her decision to breastfeed or not breastfeed. Let's try and imagine, related to puerperium, well, let's try and imagine the impact on it for a woman that was a victim of abuse. The puerperium just after birth is a very fragile, very weak moment. It entails some sudden hormone changes. And we know this feeling of fragility. And well, if we try and think about women who have such a traumatic experience, well, we can find some typical signs. For example, sometimes we see rage against health operators who haven't been good enough, not up to the expectations of the woman, or sometimes the woman is not satisfied towards herself. Sometimes she feels that she didn't reach that ideal performance that she had imagined. Very often we see that she has difficulties in changing the nappies, for example, or she's scared of cleaning or touching the child's genitals, breastfeeding problems again, and she also has chronic tiredness. She is so tired that she can't take care of her child. She is not able to create that deep relationship with her child. And this state of tiredness might be so deep, so severe, that it might lead to postnatal depression, very severe postnatal depression. So this is why Melograno has activated home visiting after birth. So home visiting is a way to be closer to women after birth, for women who are in such a delicate situation. Through our home visits, we offer support to those women, to those mothers who have difficulties in taking care of their child, in establishing a relationship with their babies, and thanks to our home visits, we have been able to support them, to help them, and also to create more well-being for the babies. And therefore, we have been working from the point of view of prevention for their future health. The experience of birth might be a great chance for women, especially women who were victims of violence. It might turn into a therapeutic experience in order to have a more self-esteem, or it could also be a situation in order to re-traumatize women. This is why it is so important for operators to develop skills, tools, abilities in order to support women in the best possible way. We know that in a very high percentage of these women might be survivors, and therefore they might need specific support in order to live this experience in the best possible way, in order to cure their wounds, and above all, in order to give the best chances, the best occasions, and more hope to the child. Therefore, we're really talking about health. We can provide health and support thanks to our work. This is my conclusion. Thank you.